I'm in South Charleston, West Virginia, and this is considered the third most dangerous city in the state of West Virginia. And it's another smaller city, population's around 13,000 people, and it started declining sharply after 2020 at a rate of 1.4% a year. 1.4 doesn't sound like a lot, and if it was a huge city, it would still be a lot, but that's a big decline to have in your population. It's 81% white, 10% black, and 2% Asian. So not very diverse, but a little bit, I guess, diverse. The average age is 41, which is a little on the older side for a lot of cities. 25% of the adults that live here are seniors, that's pretty high too. 1 in every 4 people that live here are senior citizens. And typically when you have a high senior population, you're not, the crime isn't that bad, because typically the seniors aren't the ones going out committing the crimes. But this is another city in West Virginia that's of the higher crime cities that the male-female ratio's off. Typically you figure 50-50, but often with cities with higher crime, the male-female ratio is off, and in this one it's 47% male to 53% female, and that's a pretty good gap. Sometimes you'll see 49-51, rarely 58-50 or 48-52, but this is 47-53. That's a pretty good sizable gap in their statistics here. But what you often see in cities in West Virginia, there's a high home ownership rate, and here it's 70%. And that's really high and very good for a city to have that level of home ownership. And typically cities that have high home ownership, they don't really have that high of crime. The average income here is $43,000 a year, which is pretty good, especially for the state of West Virginia. It's not a hugely expensive state to live in compared to, some states that are much higher. There's a 21% poverty rate though, with 45% of the black population living below the poverty line. So nearly 10% of the population is black, and nearly half of them are living below the poverty line. So 1 in every 5 people that live here live below the poverty line. That's a lot. They have a 36% marriage rate, which is a little on the low side. But for cities with higher crime, it's not at all. But for a city that has a quarter of their population being seniors, that's a low statistic. I'm just going to go up some of these roads and check it out. "79% of the people that live here were born here, and they're showing 98% of the people that live here were native born." So they don't have that many people from foreign countries, or that were born in a foreign country living here. They have a homicide every few years. It's not a big place that you hear about a ton of homicides at, but they do have them. And the assault rates, they go up and down every year. Some years it's as low as 250, and some years it's as high as 800. So the 250 would be generally considered halfway decent. As far as the assault rate goes, a little on the high side, but pretty much, fine, or what you'd expect. And But the 800 gets up there. When on a year that they have an assault rate of 800, they're pushing, getting close to Baltimore levels of assaults here. And for a city this small, that's not something you really want to see. Doesn't look too bad. It's clean. Their burglary rate is a little on the high side. It's 4 to 500 per 100,000 people, which is a little high, but everywhere it's high like that now. They're just high. Their theft rate though is really high. They're in the 4 to 6,000 range, and that would rank up there with some of the really bad cities, and that's probably what raises their crime level and makes them top 3 in the state. Your odds of becoming a victim of a crime here are 1 in 19. But they are showing a year-over-year decrease. Let me put the window up. They're showing a year-over-year decrease in crime by 5%, which is pretty good. Because a lot of cities are still a lot are on the decline since 2020, but a lot have started to plateau and then go back up. The cost of living here is better than the national average. And the housing is 30% lower, which explains why they have a 70% homeownership rate. They have 2 public high schools, and one is 48% of the students graduate proficient at math, and the other 21%. So the West Virginia average for math is 33%. So I guess if you combine the 2 schools together, they'd be right at the West Virginia average. For reading, one is 79% and the other is 56%. So they both do pretty good as far as reading goes. The West Virginia average is 42% for reading, so they're both above the West Virginia average. And the U.S. average on a whole for reading and math proficiency at graduation is 48%. So they're actually doing better than the U.S. average. So there's hope that things will get better here, and they'll start turning things around. I didn't see anything too bad. Again, West Virginia, so far what I've seen, it reminds me of the same as when I went through Montana. The cities that are rated as the worst for crime in any other state would be considered good, and they're not really all that bad. It's a lot of it is just poorer areas where the people they don't have a lot of money, so the theft rates are high, but they're not out killing people. The theft rates are just high. So I'm going to let this play out for just a little bit. There's not much else to really see here. It's just a working class city that has, higher than most cities in West Virginia crime, but not really what I would consider all that bad. So I'll let this play out for a little bit, and hope you enjoyed that little drive through South Charleston, West Virginia.